All right, video reflection 2. Um, I think it was last week, I had an uncomfortable conversation with the owner of a rock climbing gym that the club an officer for, the CSU Mountaineers. We had a meeting there. We climbed together there, and then at the end, I saw the owner who I had spoken with a handful of times in the past, briefly. But I found it to be very awkward and drawn out a little bit. For one thing, I was kind of in a rush to get going. I had somewhere to be afterwards, but he kind of wanted to talk and catch up. I mean, he has me being the treasurer of the Mountaineers. I had reached out to him in the past about a potential partnership in some form that would be beneficial to the club and to his business. And that kind of didn't really go anywhere. We didn't settle on anything. Our club didn't really want to commit to climbing there exclusively. So there's a little bit of awkwardness over that, at least as I perceived our interaction. I don't know, maybe we'll figure something out in the future, but another thing is he used to be stationed at the same National Guard base that I'm at. And I didn't realize that he'd gotten out of the National Guard, so I had brought that up. And then that was kind of awkward too, because we had this topic in common before, but he was leaving that part of his life behind. And then he started asking me a lot about the Guard and my military experience. I think he was asking those questions because he thought that I was very interested in that, or would have liked to talk about it, when I didn't necessarily want to, and he didn't seem to want to. But so him in general, when I've interacted with him, I think that he, especially during this conversation, I think he smiles a little bit too much, and he always has this like really upbeat like tone that he uses when he talks. Even, I mean, it's like pleasant, but it seems overly pleasant most of the times when I interact with him. It's just a little bit like maybe fake to some extent. You can't be that happy and excited with all the time with every single person you interact with. I don't know. And then he asked me, I was walking out the door and he stopped me and asked me to help him with some construction work he was doing in the climbing gym. And then I had to like wait around for a few minutes while he finished up one thing before I could actually help him. So that made it more drawn out and couldn't come up with, like, the flow of the conversation was not natural. But a few days later, I had a very pleasant conversation with a kid that I met who joined the club at a different rock climbing gym when we met up there. His name is Easton. And like right off the bat, we had so much to talk about with each other. We had this major hobby in common of rock climbing. We were both really into it. So there was a lot of excitement in our voices, and like we were talking very fast. Like I have basically an unlimited number of stories I want to share with him and with people that I've talked to about rock climbing. And he had some cool stuff to say too that I'd like to know more about in the future. And we were belaying each other while we were climbing. So basically when one person's climbing, when he's climbing, I was completely responsible for his safety. I had to pay complete attention to the situation and the rope management, and vice versa when I was climbing and he was belaying. So, and as we were talking during that, I think that made the conversation, made our interaction more intense. There's more on the line. There actually is something on the line beyond just exchanging pleasantries in our conversation. And when we weren't belaying, when we were both on the ground, definitely using some hand gestures in the excitement of telling climbing stories and talking about gear and stuff like that. Which I don't do that too often when I'm talking, except for when I'm really into a conversation, really excited. Yeah. So let's see. Reflect on what you learned about yourself. So I think I've known this for a while. My ability to connect with others and be comfortable in a conversation really depends on my mood. If I have a lot of energy on a given day, a part of the day, the environment that I'm in with the other people, and then, yeah, a million things affect my mood, of course, in the first place. But also how I feel I relate to a person or the group that I'm with, that I'm interacting with. That has a big effect on if I'm comfortable, if I can make them feel comfortable, if the conversation flows naturally, like having common hobbies like climbing, or a handful of other things I could just talk for hours about. If they're showing an interest in that, then it'll be a good conversation, definitely. But I think in general, I said this in my last video reflection, I need to ask more, I got to get better about asking more questions of the other person when they are talking about their interests or their life. Specifically, like questions that go a little bit deeper, like than normal, than just light conversation with strangers normally. That I think will show much more of a genuine interest. I notice that every once in a while when somebody's asking me questions about what I'm talking about. And I could also be a little bit quicker with those questions and those responses when there's a pause in the conversation, to avoid like the slight awkward silence moments that indicate maybe me or both of us are not like super into the conversation. Yeah.